Welcome to Just an Average Citizen, the podcast that helps to educate, inform, and empower you to make an impact in Abilene and the Big Country. Well, it's good to be back. I will say that one of the things that I could not navigate very well through campaign season was how to continue doing my podcast and all the other things that needed to happen. And so I really appreciate you checking back in. I think there's some people who are now following because of me running for city council that maybe haven't checked me out before. And so welcome. It's so important that you help share this podcast with your family and friends so they can know what's going on. Because I think what I have learned in this process is that there's definitely a need for people to understand what's going on, because we're having conversations about things that people want us to have conversations, but I don't necessarily think it's the conversations that are actually making an impact on things that affect our lives. And so one of the things I really hope to do through this podcast is to let you know what's going on. And I'm always thinking of ways to reach out to you, because one of the things that was asked most often is, while I was running for city council is, most people don't want to spend the time looking into things like you do. And I thought that was a great observation, because we do have lives. We do have things going on. But the problem is, if you don't know what's going on, it directly affects your life and the other areas. And so it's not so much important that you are always involved in what is going on, but you know how to find out the ways to be involved. And you're a part of the conversation so that when you hear things that are happening, you're like familiar with it. So it's not like something that catches you off guard. Like this election seemed to catch so many people off guard. It's crazy to me. One of the big things I did want to point out is if you go to the Abilene website and look at the homepage, they did redesign it. Sadly, I think during the weekend of the cyber attack, if I'm not correct, maybe it was the week before. So there's still cyber incident info at the top, because we don't know exactly what's going on. The last thing I saw that they were updating us on was from the 25th. So that's been quite a while. The 28th, they just said, if you need help with the planning development, you can call them, but no information about what's going on. So what I did want to show you, though, is why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's because, it's pretty important who affects policy in our city. Those are important people. But if you were to come on this website, which now it shows you can watch a meeting here, which is the recorded meetings, it's or what's on their live stream. There's a library app, pay online. So these are helpful buttons. So then you come to city news. And the last thing they said is City Abilene systems functional despite network outage. So that was a cyber attack. So let's look at all the news. Okay. So we had a city election. We had 7 days of early voting. We had an election day voting. And the last news is posted on April 21st and modified on April 28th. So that was almost a week into early voting. So there is no information on this website at all saying, hey, it's important for you to vote in this election. And I've been trying to figure out how to transition back into what I've been doing the whole time. It's not a big deal, because I was never in this race to win a seat. I was in this race to make a difference. And what's great is you can make a difference whether you're sitting in a city council seat, or you're standing at the podium during public comment, or you're sitting in the audience, or you're paying attention to what's going on. We have a lot of ways to affect change in here. There are some more strategic ones, and of course, having a little bit of power in the 7 votes that happen every other week at city council meeting does way more, but there is so much to be done as an average citizen. And so I think I accomplished quite a few things along the way. I did want to win, and that's okay that I didn't, because nothing changes. In fact, one of the things that I'm going to mention at the city council meeting is that, when I was asked what would happen if, can you come up with a little blurb to say if you won, or a blurb to say if you lost? And I thought, oh my gosh, my brain was so tired. It was really hard to do that. That was probably one of the hardest things I had to do, because I had to give them something to share. And of course, they shared the one of me losing because that was what ended up happening. But what's cool, what's fun, I guess I should say, is when I shared it, I was like, well, my answer didn't change. I'm advocating for citizens, whether I'm on the dais, sitting as a Senate councilman or person, or if I'm sitting out in the audience working on making sure we know what's going on. And based on what I saw in this election, they have something happening exactly the way they want to. The same crowd showed up, basically have those who vote for continuing the path that we've always been on, and there's those who want something different. And we just can't quite get any more in the city to get involved. And part of it is people don't know what's going on. So even like when I was standing out on Friday night talking to somebody, because that's what I did the whole time, was I tried to talk to people, and it was awesome getting to talk to people with real concerns about what's going on. The lady didn't even know that voting was the next day. She was wanting to go vote on Monday. And so the amount of time and effort it takes to get people engaged and informed about what's going on with elections was almost when elections were over. And that's when people were ready to start being involved. And that's the problem, is that the city is complicit in this. And so part of what we're going to do and what I'm going to help others do is to advocate better to make sure people know what's going on, because it costs them nothing to post anything, a little blurb on the website saying city elections, here's early voting. It doesn't cost them anything. But it might cost them the vote, because if you looked at the results, it was 236 difference between the yes and the no on the bond, and they wanted the bond. So much so that our Abilene Chamber of Commerce was willing to put money into the hat to make sure that the advertisement happened, so that people believed that this bond was going to be for things it was not. In fact, even along the campaign trail, I heard people say that it was going to bring in another airline. And that's not true. Nothing is changing. We're just getting a facelift at our airport. The other things are independent of what is going on in the building or the airport. So that's a conversation for another day. But I do want to let you know that I'm so grateful for any of you who are joining me on this podcast, because you know that I am advocating for citizens, because we need to have a place where we can have a voice and we can be heard. And right now it's not going to be in the city hall, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And I've got some exciting things coming up. In fact, if you're wanting to know more of what's going on in the city, but you don't have time to go to the meetings, I've got some ideas on how we can create a space for you. Because one of the things I learned is that unless you're willing to be or able to take off, and part of what I do allows me that flexibility, you don't get to have a say. You don't get to be a part of it. And that is unacceptable to me. It may be the norm for most places, but I just think Abilene was meant for more, and we can do better. And I think the citizens want more. And that's what I heard. So just because the vote didn't go that way doesn't mean people aren't wanting differences and changes to happen. So we'll see if we can make an impact on this side of the podium, because that's what I hope to do. I'm not changing anything. That's what's great about what God's called me to do, is I'm called to make a positive impact in our community. And when we promote raising money for nonprofits more than we promote our elections, we've got our eggs in the wrong basket, because we've got to have a functioning city to make sure that we have a place for all those nonprofits to function. But that's not kind of the way things are going. And so I know that might be a little controversial, but I've watched some of the ways people promote things and how it's shared on social media. So we're going to step away from social media. I'm still posting on there, but I want more in-person time to get to know people and give them the opportunities and directions to make an impact where God has placed them, because we all have something we're supposed to deposit in our community, and each one of us has something different to offer. And so if we're all isolated and alone, we're not going to be able to successfully do that. So this podcast this week is going to be short and sweet. I just wanted to let you know I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. In fact, Sunday morning I got up and I put on my average citizen name tag, because that hasn't changed. I am still functioning as an average citizen, and I'm looking for other average citizens who want to improve the quality of life for us here in Abilene. And someone was frustrated with me because of a position I took early on and some things that I thought weren't working well in the city. And I thought, what's funny is there's always something that gets you motivated and fired up to start paying attention. And you're going to find that if you haven't already gotten there, you're going to get there where something comes too close to home and you're like, that's not okay. I'm not okay with that. And then you figure out where to go. And my job and my goal is to make that process so much easier so you know exactly where to go and you don't have to stumble around and waste time like I did for a couple of years trying to figure out how to make an impact. We have a broken system. We have things that are not working, and citizen input is very, very much a low priority based on my experience and based on my conversations that I've had with people. Now, not everyone is that way, but there's enough of that mentality going on that you're going to be discouraged before you're encouraged to get involved. And that's why I'm here, because our government was created for the people, by the people. And if the people aren't participating, we got 8% of people showing up to vote on something. It's not really working the way it was supposed to. And that's come from decades of being told that we leave it to the professionals. We leave it to those who know what they're doing to run the show. And that has been detrimental to so many communities across the nation, especially here in Abilene, because just because they're in a position of power doesn't mean they have all that information like they need to. And that's one thing I discovered along this campaign trail is I'm actually probably more aware of what's going on than some people running for office. And that was surprising to me because I was thinking, well, maybe I would see some things that I didn't have the ability to understand. But nope, you stick with me, you're going to figure out how to be just as qualified and just as informed as people sitting on the council. And so that should be an eye-opener to you that it doesn't take that much. It just takes some intentional time and energy. And I didn't start this way. I didn't get here overnight. It took me asking questions and trying to find answers. And what I've told the council, and will probably tell them again, is that I'm so thankful that they didn't just do what I asked in the beginning, because had they done that, I would have never figured out what I needed to know. And it would have kept me in a place of disconnectedness and being unaware and uninvolved, because it's through those times of having the door shut in your face multiple times that gives you the desire to, is this really important? Is this worth fighting for? And I will say, heck yes, it has been so many good things have come out of this. And so I think that's all I'm going to cover for now because we've got a lot of things to do, and I'm excited. I'm not sure if I'll get to the podcast next week. I'm going to try real hard, but I've got some exciting family events coming up that I've been looking forward to that have been kind of something that has been on my mind, and I'm excited, but I had to get in for sure this week because I want you to know that nothing has changed. And yes, I am so grateful for all the support and encouragement I got along the way. And while it didn't turn out the way I wanted to, and I'm just an average citizen still, which, by the way, apparently some other people on the council feel like they're kind of an average citizen too. And that was kind of a fun little win, getting them to admit that. But I don't think they understand what average citizen means, because when we have people sitting in office for 15 years, I don't think that's what the founders intended, for this to be a lifelong career. I think it was meant for all people to be involved, for us to have a regular rotation of who is paying attention, because we all know what's going on. It doesn't take a special caliber of person to do it. It just takes someone who's willing to do the work and know the details and information to make good decisions on what's best for our city. So I hope that gives you a little hope for things to come. I'm excited and ready to meet the challenge, and I'll be able to do some things that I knew would be a little limiting as a council person. So, in some ways I've got free reign on what I can do and what I can talk about, and I'm looking forward to that. So thanks for sticking with me. Let's get back to being educated, informed, and empowered to make an impact in Abilene and the Big Country. Until next time.